Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is public comment. Commission requests that the comments be limited to a maximum number of 5 minutes. Please state your name and address. When you come to the podium, first speaker is Tim Jury. Welcome. Former Mayor of Chapman. Glad to have you.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it. Is there any way that we can have, I noticed that on the agenda 5H, would I be able to entertain?
We ask that people do their comments during public comment.
Oh,
if we have specific questions, we can draw you from the audience. We don't like to get a round robin going.
Oh, I wouldn't want to either. I understand.
It gets too long and confusing. So if you want to say something, this is the time.
Okay. Mayor, council, legal counsel, community, thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I think, all of us as a general contractor in the community for a long time, lost count how many years. Started with my dad when it was Jury Construction way back in the 70s. And so we're here obviously to enhance and add value to your home as well as all the community. And we want to continue doing that. And in the process of doing that, we desperately need code enforcement. And recently, there's been a change, as you all know, as far as how that's been enforced. And so it's made a lot of the contractors uncomfortable, nervous, scared, not really sure. We were kind of just caught by surprise all of a sudden, and of course a lot of anxiety. The level goes up pretty high when that happens, and so we're like, okay, now what do we do? We're told we only have 9 months to go get state licensed. We have a lot of concerns that of course a lot of us that have been in the business a while, of course, take offense to it, but the older I've gotten, the more I've learned that I have so much more to learn, and education is not a bad thing. Again, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to speak on the behalf of not just the contractors, but all the citizens, not just in Junction City, but Geary County. They deserve quality value to their homes with guys that are insured and guys that really do care. I think that we've been able to do that. Of course, there's nobody that hasn't made a mistake. If you haven't made a mistake, well, then you probably just haven't been a general contractor long enough. But thankfully, we have code enforcement guys with another pair of eyes, and I've always embraced that. I really think it's necessary to have, and thankfully, we've been able to do that here in Junction City and Geary County, and it sure makes it a lot nicer to be able to build a home or to remodel or put a room addition on, knowing that somebody's going to help me, make sure it's good in the way it ought to be. Again, I want to say I'm here not tonight to complain, but to be a part of the solution. We want what you guys want, which is to add value to the community. And of course, by doing that, that raises the assessed value. Appraisals, we've been really struggling lately to build a new home. You have to have good comparables. So when I want to build a custom home for a client, that's the first thing they do. They go back 6 months and they look, okay, what's sold in this area, and how is this comparable? Tim, why are you saying it's going to cost $300,000 to build this house? We can't get a comparable that's sold $250,000. Does your client have $50,000 in a savings account or something like that? So it's always been, and the realtors have made great strides in joining with Manhattan. Man, that was some of the best news that I'd heard in a long time, because that helps me as a contractor. That's creating solutions. That's helping getting our comparables up, something that has been needed for a long time. And in code enforcement, we'd like to do the same thing. I mean, we'd like to continue that. And of course, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. But I think one of the best ways to do it would be to put together a task force that, appointed by the mayor, of your choice. Be really nice to have a bunch of different people there that represented realtors, that represented, the plumbers, the electricians, 5 or 6 different guys that would say, okay, this is what we really want. We want to improve the community. We want to improve code enforcement, and we feel like, this, and get back with us so that we have, we're up to speed on what's really expected of us, because we're the ones trying to make it all happen, and we don't have no intentions of crossing anybody. It's anyway.
Go ahead and cut you off on time here, Mr. Jerry.
My question was, would you be willing to sit and talk? But I realize you can't answer me. But
Solutions will be forthcoming, and we're going to have more discussion about it tonight.
Thank you.
We're not trying to create a problem. We're trying to get a good solution that works for everybody, protects the cities and the citizens' liability.
Appreciate that.
We want you to be part of the solution, not a problem.
Right. That's exactly why I come. I'm glad we're on the same page.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michelle Howard.
Good evening.
Hi. Welcome.
As you see, guys, my name is right below her, so I'm with her.
Okay.
I'm with her.
My name is
Sabrina
Michelle
and Michelle
Howard. Been living here in Junction City since 2005. Consider Junction City my home. From Coffeyville, Kansas. We've been here, 13, 14 years. However, unlike the gentleman that just left, I'm here to complain. This morning, we called in a water bill. My children usually pay the water bill between the middle of the month because I have empty nesters. They came home from college, then one came home from a divorce. So the water bill is their bill, that one bill. So my daughter called to pay it in, and they allowed her to pay it in, but she had to pay a whole another $100 because apparently our name was on some imaginary water bill list. So when my daughter asked what that list was, it means that our name had been on the list for 2 years because we paid our water bill on the due date. So keep in mind, the water was not turned off. She called around 8 o'clock on her break. So instead of the $170 for the water bill, which is really, really high, being in this size of town and the size of our house, she had to pay $270. She had to pay a $100 reconnect fee, although the water was still on, and another $50 for being on the list. My question is, since she had called that in, and it was before the man actually even went to the truck to turn the water bill off, how is that even ethical?
Well, I'll have to turn that over to you guys because we don't take care of the bills, but
I mean, it's just a
City
complaint.
code says that if you don't pay by, is it 17 days after you get your bill? I can't remember the number of days. I don't have the ordinance in front of me.
I have it.
You pay a 10% fee. If is it 10 days lapse or 7 days lapse, you're charged with a disconnect fee, even though it does get disconnected. And that is done, I mean, and this is not the only city that does it, Because what happens, and I'll use Britain meetings we used last time, I see them disconnecting Britain, so I rent to the city office right away, and Britain has to pay the charge, and I don't have to, because they shut his off, and I saw that, so I ran and paid it real quickly. Well, what happens if it came to me first? I mean, Britain would be penalized because they came to him first, not me. So this is a standard ordinance. Most cities, if you don't pay your bill on time, a 10% penalty is added, and if you
I
don't
can
pay it on time,
understand the
if you
10%,
don't
that's
pay
fair,
again,
sir.
it is
But a
considered
whole
reconnecting.
$150?
That's been the policy of the city here for many years.
Well, is it ethical? Is it even fair? Because this is, we both work on poles, so we're okay, but, that's a whole nother light bill or car payment. Junction City doesn't have a whole lot of white-collar residents. I just think that needs to be reviewed, and changed.
I've had
because
mine shut off before, too. I didn't pay my bill, I paid it.
But, sir, we paid the water bill it was still on. So what I'm saying is, how can they do that when your name came on a list that we know nothing about?
It's a date, not an action.
Right.
And because if they'd have went the other way around town, they might have got to that one first. I don't know. I don't know what process they took.
My thing, if it's gentlemen and ladies, if it's paid before it's actually turned off, I don't think that should be an additional fee. We reviewed some of the other communities, even Manhattan, and theirs is not as high as Junction City.
Manhattan's is 50 flat, $50. Come on, $150.
Our shut-off fee is $50. $100 was a deposit, which they'll get back after, 2 years?
2 years of no.
Now that deposit goes back to us,
Correct.
to our account.
Correct.
And how will I know how will I know?
It credits to the bill.
It'll credit to the bill.
Okay. And
So I got to wait 2 years to get my $100 back.
apparently, though, they must, and again, I don't have the count in front of me, so we can't evaluate here. We ask for additional deposits when you've been shut off more than
3 or more
times?
times.
3 or more times.
It was not we never got shut off. That's the problem. The problem was
We'd be
our
happy to
name
review it
was
at the
on a
office, but
list.
it's tough for us to make any comments tonight.
Yes, sir. I understand
I don't
that.
see the count,
Staff will review it, and they'll get back with you.
So they
Other-
said I
other
can talk to
phone
the
number?
city manager as well. Can I
Kim?
still request that? Oh, well, I want to talk to you, sir. And when can we do this? Just
Call
one-on-one?
my secretary.
I shall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person is Gary Olds. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gary Oles. I live at 3308 Frontier Circle, Manhattan. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I have 5 quick topics I want to hit within my 5 minutes. First off, I need to apologize for my appearance. I had to get 12 places mowed today. We're flying out tomorrow to see 6 of our 8 grandsons. So it's been a crazy day.
Haven't
Plus, we got a
up here
place
mowing for
rented
you.
today, so you got another water bill account.
Good for you.
Wait $200 to get that money back.
Yeah, theirs was only 150. So, all right. First point that I want to make is in this last quarter, as most of you know, I own rental property here in town, and I'm the chairman of the Geary County Landlords Association. The last quarter, I got the opportunity to replace 2 sewer lines on my properties. Much to my surprise, I had to pay a $100 sewer easement permit, if that's the right terminology, twice. So I got to invest $200 for no reason that I could see of, because there's also the $30 inspection fee or whatever it's called. It used to be a craft fee that you'd pay. So I appreciate Alan coming to our last meeting and talking. He's always open to talk and visit about these things. I just would like you to consider looking at that ordinance and perhaps repealing it. It makes no sense to me. And if it's going to stay on the books, assure me that Westar Energy, Kansas Gas Service, and any other utility company such as Cox that has underground services, or Larson Construction that does boring for them, is also paying that $100 fee. Then I would feel understandable, because then it's fairly done to
Did you
everyone.
make a new tap?
No,
No,
replaced
okay.
a sewer line.
Okay.
And that may be in the miscommunication. So if that's the case, I'd like to find out and get a refund. But I would like you to consider to review that ordinance. Secondly, excuse me, as the code department and Chief Johnson is working diligently to try to review all the issues that have to deal with the code department. I would suggest that Chief Johnson and you all consider revising the ordinance pertaining to permits for windows, siding, door replacement. That topic's going to come up in the future with regards to fees and schedules or whatever it's called. There's really no need for those fees. That's true of roofing also. There's no reason for permits on roofing because there's no service provided. When you replace the windows, they don't inspect. When you replace a roof, they don't inspect. In fact, if I called for a roof inspection, they've been forbidden to go up on the roof because you don't want a workers' comp claim, which is understandable. But there's no reason for those fees. Number 3, and Ray could probably answer this better than anybody else, but I thought I'd ask it here publicly. Can you give us an idea in general, and not now, I can talk to you later, is what's the street sweeping schedule for Junction City? All of my properties are in the older part of town, north of 6th Street, and I'm telling you, the gutters are just full of leaves. I was out on the south end of town and saw the little machine out there doing a great job, but I'd like to know, is there parity? Does the whole city eventually get swept between April and November? Hopefully so. You don't have to answer that question right now. Thirdly, I'd just like to support any efforts that you're going to make this evening with regards to the pit bull ordinance and any discussion and decisions. It's a long overdue thing, and as part of the Landlords Association, we appreciate your efforts to try to get a handle on that because it's definitely an issue. I know in my practices, if you say pit bull, you're not my tenant. We're done because I've had my insurance canceled because a tenant had one and I didn't know it. And lastly, one other thing that I'd like you to do, hopefully you all got the the Daily Union, and this past Sunday I had a letter to the editor on behalf of the Geary County Landlords Association. Would like you to reconsider amending the ordinance that you recently passed with regards to private trash haulers to bring some parity or fairness to that ordinance so that you too, as sanitation provider, set that money aside in a specific alley fund for repairs, as you do with stormwater. Hopefully you've read the letter to the editor, and at least you kind of grasp of where we're coming from. Thank you for your time, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Next time is the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion or comment? All in favor of the motion, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next item is special presentations. We have one proclamation. City of Junction City Arbor Day Proclamation. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas Junction City has been recognized as a Tree City USA for the 43rd year by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting ways. Now, therefore, I, Pat Landis, Mayor of Junction City, Geary County, Kansas, do hereby proclaim April 26, 2019 as the 147th anniversary celebration of Arbor Day. In the City of Junction City, I urge all citizens to support efforts to care for our trees and woodlands and to support our city's community forestry program. And I further urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations. Thank you, Ray.
Makes it official.
Okay, next is a presentation of the state-winning Arbor Day poster to Ashley Picasso from Sheridan Elementary School.
Mayor Landis and Commissioners, I'm proud to present Ashley Picasso. She participated in the Kansas State Forest Service Arbor Day poster contest, and she was named the state winner. So we are very proud. In all my 20 years, this is the first time I ever had a state winner. So I'm very proud of her, and we would like to present that to her. With you presenting it, what I would like to do is pass out these posters so you can see what kind of competition she had to take on. Become the state winner.
Do we get to keep this? Ed.
He took ours. That's pretty good.
Well done.
Ashley had to compete against 6 different districts in the state, and to do that, and all the 5th graders, so you can see that there's quite a bit of competition there, and she did a great job. So we're very proud of her, and Ashley's here with her parents, and also we have Kim Baumberger from the State Forest Service. She's their program. They're the ones that set up the program. So Ashley, if you could come up front.
Show everybody what she did.
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, next presentation is a financial presentation by Jeff White of Columbia Capital. Welcome, sir.
That's a hard act to follow.
I first met Jeff about 8 or 9 years ago when I first started on this governing body, and things were much more bleak.
They were indeed. Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission, my name is Jeff White with Columbia Capital. It's been our pleasure to serve as the city's financial advisor and investment advisor for a number of years. I'm here for 2 purposes tonight. One is to say hello. A number of new faces since we were last here, and fortunately for most of you, I haven't had to deliver any bad news. Unlike the mayor, who heard a bunch of it right at the very beginning. So wanted to provide a quick introduction to me and to the firm, and then jump in and give you a very quick kind of 10-slide history lesson, and then picture of where we are today, and then talk about really what a success story the city of Junction City's been, and how to keep that momentum going. So very, very quick bio on us. Columbia Capital is an independent financial and investment advisor. Firm's been in business about 22 years. We work all over the country, but primarily in Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Oklahoma. We've advised on somewhere north of $57 billion in bonds and something like 1,200 different transactions during that time. We're headquartered in Kansas in Overland Park. There's 10 of us there, and it's been our pleasure to provide the city with financial and investment advisory services over the last few years. We do manage about $715 million in assets for other communities like Junction City as well, idle funds, bond proceeds, those kinds of things. So it's been great to work with Lindsay and Alan to keep things going. So I am still astonished, even though I participated in developing a plan called the Fiscal Transformation Plan back in, I think, 2011 or 2012 to kind of help move things forward at the city. I'm still astonished at where we ended up. I could not have dreamt back then that we would be in the position we are today here at the city. But I want to start by just giving you a quick picture. So I will take you back. Sorry about the fonts there. I will take you back to 2005. If I'm reading that correctly, which was right at the cusp of the Big Red One coming back to Kansas, or at least the announcement. And Junction City jumped in with both feet to sponsor housing development, both single-family and multifamily housing, using every resource available to it, including cash. Thanks, Lindsay. So on the cash side, you can see that in 2005, the city ended the year with $4.6 million in the bank, which for a community this size is pretty good. By 2009, it ended the year with less than $1 million in the bank, a very small amount of money. And in fact, former city manager Jerry Vernon told me in 2009 there was a point where the city had less than $100,000 in cash. It was literally a payroll away from not being able to pay the bills. So pretty drastic. The next slide shows how much the city had in outstanding general obligation bonds. And as Alan noted earlier, as we were going through this doesn't count. This doesn't count state revolving loan funds. This is just GO. Started in 2005 with about $27 million in outstanding bonds, which again is not a huge amount for a community this size. By the end of 2009, that had nearly quadrupled to $98 million. That figure actually got higher as we went to 10 and 11 and 12 because the city had temp notes that it had issued that it hadn't yet converted into long-term bonds. So you can see the impact of the city issuing debt primarily, again, to support special assessments for housing development projects. So pretty astonishing growth in the debt outstanding. The city used what was called an insured-only bond rating up through 2007. And then starting in 2008, it got what we call an underlying bond rating, a rating of the city's own credit rather than an insurer. And the reason that 2007, 2008 is the dividing line is that in August of 2007, there were 7 AAA insurance carriers writing municipal bond insurance policies in the nation. And by the end of 2008, I think there were 2, and then there are none, even today, that have a triple. There's only 2 companies left that write municipal bond policies at all because of the credit crisis. So the city's bond rating was an A-, which is the 7th highest rating available. That was back in 2008 and 2009. We can measure the impact of all of this additional debt by looking at the city's general obligation bond payments against its general fund budget. So if we took the general fund budget and measured it against the bond payments, in 2005 we were paying about 17% of our general fund budget equivalent in debt service payments on our general obligation bonds, and as you can see, that more than doubled by 2009, and again that continued to increase in the subsequent years as well. This slide is an interesting one, and it bears a little bit of explanation. So under state law, cities have a limit on the amount of general obligation debt they can have outstanding at 30% of their assessed valuation. Most communities this size don't run into debt limit problems because if they issue enough, it tends to negatively impact their credit ratings. But as you can see in 2005, the city could have issued nearly $20 million in general obligation bonds at that point without having blown through its statutory debt limit. You can see by 2007 that dropped to about $1 million. It pops back up in 2009 because the city had to petition the state legislature to change the statute to actually increase the limit in order to allow it to accommodate all the debt that it was issuing and had been issuing for housing bonds. That increased limit had a trail-off period, and you can see the impact of that in 2010 and 2011. By 2011, effectively, the city had no capacity under state law to issue general obligation bonds. That is, as Alan talks about a lot, having come from a community that recovered from natural disasters, a really dangerous position for a community to be in, not to have any ability, even if it needs to, not just because it wants to, but it really needs to issue general obligation debt, to not have any access to the market. That's where the city was in 2011, and really, frankly, has been up until about a couple years ago. Okay, so in 2011, as I mentioned, working together with city staff, we presented to the Commission a fiscal transformation plan, and the Commission made some incredibly difficult choices and brave choices, I think, given where the community was at the time, to enhance revenues, to cut expenses, to take a very hard line on no additional borrowing, and to really put itself on an austerity plan that continues to this day, importantly. But kudos to you, kudos to the community. A lot went unspent, a lot went undone in that period, and lesser communities would not have made the hard choices that you did. All right, so now we get to talk about good news. So where we are. So if I can find myself on my presentation here. So over the last 3 years, we've seen cash and investments rise to what we expect to be, after the audit's done, north of $25 million. Imagine having gone from less than $1 million nearly 10 years ago to more than $25 million today. It's stunning. It's really incredible. Outstanding bonds are still very high. And if you read rating agency reports about the community, you'll see that very high debt burden, but starting to come down. And as we'll talk about in a second, that really accelerates going forward. The city's great work has been recognized by the credit rating agency. So you might recall in 2009, 2010, the city had an A- credit rating. That's the 7th highest available. Even given the amount of debt outstanding, that credit rating has grown since then to the 5th highest credit rating available, and we think you're actually on the cusp of another upgrade here coming in the next year or two if things continue on a positive track. I mentioned again a bit ago that we can measure the impact of the cost of the debt outstanding by looking at general fund expenditures, and you can see it's still a staggering amount. Basically, in 2018, if we compare your principal and interest on your general obligation bonds to every dollar you spend out of the general fund for police and fire and general city administration, it would have equated to 1 out of every $2 going to pay debt service. That, I don't have to tell you, that crowds out city services, it crowds out infrastructure investment, it really shackles your hands to do important things for the community. But again, we expect that to continue to go down. This is a really stunning slide. So as we look at a non-modified state statute, so we're back under the regular old state statute, we've seen our year-end debt margin climb from just shy of $10 million in 2015 to what we're projecting to be just north of $20 million in 18. I don't think the city has any intention of issuing new general obligation debt, but if you had a disaster, if you needed to issue, that would certainly be available to you.
That's still based on the 34%, right?
It's based on the...
Up to 30% next year.
Yes, but this is the worst case.
Oh, yeah.
This is the worst case in any year looking out, so it incorporates that.
We're already below 30%, so.
Yeah, yep.
25 something.
Yep. So what's next? A little bit of good news finally on the investment front after a decade of overnight rates in the few hundredths of percentage points. We've seen short-term rates increase lately. You have $25 million in the bank. That generates interest income. That interest income ends up benefiting the various and sundry city funds, including the general fund. That money becomes available for spending on city operations. So it's a great way to basically pay for the normal increases, inflationary costs of government, without additional pressures on taxes. We do expect to be back before you next year talking hopefully about debt refinancing. So the city's bonds, most municipal bonds when they're issued, give the city the ability to call those bonds to refinance them just like you'd refinance your home loan. Unlike a home loan where you can do it any time, we typically have to wait somewhere between 8 and 10 years. So we have 2 series of bonds coming up next year that if we had the ability to refinance them today would produce pretty substantial savings. So hopefully with some tailwinds in the interest rate markets, we'll be back before you next year talking about a refunding of those bonds to save, what could be $1 million or more in debt service going forward. As I mentioned a second ago, we do hope that if trends continue, that the city will see an upgrade in its bond rating into the AA category, which again is a very nice third-party acknowledgement that things are going the right direction here. I've provided on this slide some direct commentary out of the last city credit rating in, I think, 2016 that talks about what could change the rating up, what could change the rating down. And certainly, I think the stronger debt profile is something you're accomplishing just by retiring debt without adding new debt. The economy in the state and hopefully here too continues to improve. This slide's a fun one. Alan likes this one. What this shows is basically the city's outstanding debt by year going forward. The city will amortize more than 85% of its outstanding general obligation bonds over the next 10 years. So if I stand before your successors here in another decade and we haven't added any more debt, we'll be at roughly 1/6 of the outstanding bonds then as we have today. That's a very aggressive repayment schedule. And what that means for you is by the time we get to the mid-2020s, we'll have a significant amount of debt capacity, not just under a statutory formula, but under kind of the concept of being able to start reinvestment in the community without putting upward pressure on your debt service mill levy. So that's an important one. So to wrap things up, again, I continue to be astounded with the work that you all have done, that staff has done, that the community has done to get to this point. We can all sleep easier knowing that if you needed to access the credit markets, you've got debt capacity to do it. The city can afford it, whether you use cash, whether you use bonds. But I will make one important point that success is fragile. And it's important to continue all of the good habits that you've gotten yourselves into here over the last half decade or so, because we've got a ways to go. And it's really another 5 to 7 years before I think we can declare ourselves past the fiscal crisis that we ran into at the latter part of the last decade. So, Mr. Mayor, with that, I'm certainly happy to try and address any questions.
Questions for Mr. White?
Jeff, we've talked about this, and the commission has too. Our sales tax, 1% that was voted by the voters in 2010 expires December 31st of 2020. How important is that for us to go to the voters to ask for a renewal of that sales tax?
Yeah, never easy to ask the voters to approve a new tax or extend an existing one, but it's absolutely critical for this community. Kind of given the obligations that you're already burdened with, the loss of that would have a pretty detrimental impact on your operating budget and your ability to continue to finance the debt.
And right now, we're scheduled to take that to the ballot upon approval of the commission later summer in November of this year.
That was one of the life rafts that we needed to get out of this.
It was.
If we didn't have it, everybody's taxes would have gone up by 20 or 30 mils at least. And we're still looking at that if we don't renew it. Because that is the cushion, the sales tax, we rely on sales tax, property tax, and so on to pay for this whole operation. So if we lose that, we're all in big trouble, especially property owners. So the sales tax is the most even way to distribute it amongst everyone. Everybody pays it regardless. And it's just continuing the same operation. You can see what that sales tax addition did for our community. It's astounding, he said. If we didn't have it, the state would have taken over. So it is critical that we renew that at the end of this year. Mr. White, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you
your
all.
work.
Good to see you. Thanks so much.
Good presentation.
It's nice to get good news.
Yeah, it is good.
It's nice to deliver it, too.
So we'll move on to new business. First time is consideration of the bid received for the 2019 street maintenance project. Mr. Ibarra?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, we're up here to request rejecting the 2019 street maintenance project bids. The city budgeted $1.5 million for the 2019 street maintenance improvement program. Call Valley Engineering developed the plans, construction estimates, and quantities for the materials for the project. Call Valley and staff evaluated all the streets and figured out what we needed to do that. We advertised through the Daily Union city website and direct solicitation. Bid opening was held on April the 3rd, and we only had one bid for the project, and that was Smoky Hill LLC, and their bid amount was $1.756 million. Engineer's estimate for the street project was $1.5 million. Smoky Hill's bid was $226,000 over the engineer's estimate. The 2019 street maintenance project consisted of the roundabout at the intersection of McFarland and Eisenhower Drive, a 2-inch mill and overlay over McFarland Road from US 77 to the new roundabout, and reconstruction of Miller Drive. Funding would not be available within the street funds to cover the $7.5 million for the project. We are looking to reject that bid and reevaluate the project and determine a strategy for achieving more competitive bids. What we would do as an alternative is go ahead and do more asphalt streets. What we would do is add the McFarland Road from US 77 to Eisenhower, and then reconstruct Miller Drive, and then we've added a number of other streets, and that will put us at roughly about $900,000. There is $1.25 million sitting in the street fund to do that project. And I'll be happy to entertain any questions you might have, and Leon Osborne is here from Call Valley to answer any questions you might have too.
Questions? So do we feel like we can get the roundabout done this year? Probably not.
No, probably not.
Not
We would look to go out for another bid probably late November, December, and then look for 2020 to go ahead and build that roundabout.
Okay.
So would we find 300,000 worth of other roads in town that need some attention?
There is no shortage.
Yes, we don't have a shortage. We are looking at the Westwood area to the north part up and around Thompson Hill Drive, Rockwell. We would finish that. That would complete that section of road. And then we looking at, for mobilizational purposes, looking around Green Hills, doing all Bittersweet, over there by the Y on Chadwick, completing that, and then part of Caroline. So that's what we got currently. We can look to see if any direction you want us to go. If you want us to continue on and try to use the $1.25 million we got in the street budget, we'd be happy to do that.
Can I ask a question? And you may have answered in the past, and I apologize, I don't recall what you said. Since we're going to be looking at redirecting the street, on money for the streets, Washington Street and that roundabout, the road around it, it's been patched now, but is that part of this funds,
No.
or is there another fund for that?
Commissioner Fitzgerald, what we're looking to do is we're looking for the C-CLIP project from KDOT, and we put it in for the 2021 for reconstruction of that.
2021 for that?
Because we got the C-CLIP project from Home Street to Washington, to Grant Avenue and 18th Street, and 18th Street to Jackson. That's part of the C-CLIP project for 2020. So we'll be doing that.
And the C-CLIP will pay 50% of that, correct?
80.
80.
It's 80
80%.
now. It's from 50 to 80.
Oh, yeah, because we went from Link to C-CLIP.
C-CLIP.
Yep.
More competitive, but better return.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I know you've said it again, I just wanted to, because, a lot of people do talk about that not being,
So
the
that's
best
what
shape.
we'll look at doing that, and then to further on for the other rest of the C-CLIP will be from 6th Street all the way to Reynolds Street, and that'll be for 2022.
Okay.
So that's what we're
Those
looking
are
at.
connecting links. It makes sense to grab 80% of the funding from the state.
So do we feel we're going to get more bidders than just the one? just by taking the roundabout out of there?
We feel we can with the asphalt. We've talked to some local contractors, and they said that they are hurting for asphalt work, so we feel that we can get a good bid that way.
Any further questions from Mr. Ibarra?
I make a motion to reject the 1.756806.36 bid from Smoky Hill LLC for the 2019 street maintenance as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion or comment? All in favor of the motion, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Next item is consideration of upgrades and revisions to the roundabout located at East Chestnut Street. Mr. Lazier.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Tonight, I'm bringing a proposal forward to you to make some improvements, upgrades to the actual roundabout planner on East Chestnut. These improvements include actually physical improvements to how the roundabout is built, as well as adding some additional plants. We had Master Landscape come in and do some design work for us. I've kind of attached their comments and what they would like to kind of do. What their thoughts are is they're trying to come up with a creative, I think I've even put it in the notes here, a little bit more of a natural prairie feel and add a three-dimension look to the roundabout. Something a little different than what you see in roundabouts just kind of all over, just kind of trying to change it up. So I know we had done a lot on the East Chestnut corridor last year with Ms. Fitzgerald's help, and we spent quite a bit of money on that area as well as the roundabout on irrigation, getting all those upgrades done. So the plantings, we haven't really added any plantings at all to this since 2016. That's the last time we added any plantings. So what we're looking to do is their plan kind of calls out for using about 50% of the existing plants. And if you look at the second, I guess the second page is the elevations that shows you how they're trying to get the three-dimension. They want to raise the statue up a little bit and then put maybe some big boulders around it and kind of get that raised up. But then the main change on it'd be the second attachment, the aerial view. You see the original layout of the roundabout, and then you can see where I kind of colored in yellow. Those are going to be new additional retaining walls built with new flowers. If you guys can see that. And those will even be at a lower level, so everything will kind of step up, and then the plantings will kind of do the same thing. They'll step up, so you see the different layers as you go. I see you're looking sideways. The first one is the elevation, and then the second one is the, yeah. I rotated it before we put it in, but it still ended up that way. So, we had budgeted actually $9,000 just for general landscaping in the 2019 budget. This bid came in around $17,430. So I'm here tonight to ask for the additional funding and your approval of this project. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have specifically.
Well, I think the artist renditions in here look very nice. And, I know when it's finished, it'll look really, really beautiful. And as you spoke, we have spent a lot of time on Chestnut because that's one of the first exits coming off the interstate into our town. And really, it is about first impressions when you come into a community. And if the community looks good when you first definitely get off the interstate, would hope that a more positive feeling would be taken away from it. I think it looks really good, the artist rendition of it.
Raising the statue 5 feet changes everything as far as what kind of plant materials you can use. And the natural grasses and the sunflowers just really opens everything up, but you need height to do that. Yep. So that's the purpose of that. And then filling in kind of in between the fan blades, as it were, there with different types of things, it's going to really change it a lot. So.
And don't worry about the funding. As we develop budgets, as we always do, we have line items, but, it can fall out of the line items, and there's plenty of room we had in there because we have projects that we're probably not going to do this year that were in the budget. So there's always give and take in those things, and we watch the cash at the same time, and don't see any issue.
I hope it's okay to ask at this point too. I know we're looking at taking care of this, but can you elaborate on the flower beds? Because I know you budgeted to make sure that
sure. And just kind of like what Mr. White was talking about, things are getting a little better. We can do some better things. Last year, for this year's budget, we were able to budget for a professional company to take care at least of the East Chestnut corridor as far as taking care of all the planters. They have the expertise and the manpower to know to go in there at certain times and say, this plant needs trimmed, this one needs deadheaded, to try to keep the colors going, and so that has already been scheduled for this year. So that project is in place, and it is our intent to follow through with the new addition of the roundabout and get that on that same list. So at least once a month, professional people are coming out and looking at it, and so we can really try to.
Good for that update, appreciate it.
Are there any concerns with creating visibility issues with taller?
I apologize for not
Version
recalling
hires?
his name, but at one of the last Call Valley meeting we had, I did show plans to this to Call Valley's folks and talked about any sightline issues, and he said there should be no issue with KDOT. We did talk about that.
No.
Yeah, he said no. I'm trying to think. It wasn't Bill. Who would I spoke to? It wasn't Bill Weatherman. It was the other guy.
It was Justin.
Justin. Okay, yeah, it was Justin. So, yes, we checked into that before moving forward.
I think the biggest issue is everybody coming off the interstate so fast and you crash into it. But
As I said, thanks, Ed, for going about this and putting this on your radar, because this is, and I know as far as from a traveler's perspective too, as far as a truck stop to Walmart, it's their first intro to Junction City. Yes. So thank you for putting it on your radar and seeking out these bids and making sure it looks nice as can be. So thank you for that.
Any further questions? Is there a motion?
make a motion to approve the upgrades to the East Chestnut roundabout.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Next item, consideration of ordinance G 1239, criminalizing falsely representing a service animal. Mr. Stites.
Mr. Mayor, Commission, I bring this before you based upon some of the experience we've had in the last 12 to 18 months in my office in prosecuting various animal issues. A lot of people do represent animals that they claim are service animals that may not fall underneath that. And that's kind of an issue that we run into. And what I see for our community is the issue we run into is delegitimizing service animals for those who actually need them. Creates a skepticism in people and how they deal with it, whether it's law enforcement, city officials, Walmart even, and we think with landlords. There's a distinction there between the American with Disabilities Act and what that protects, and then Fair Housing Act also deals with emotional support animals, which this does not deal with. It's just the service animal issue. And what I've taken is a lot of language. There's a Kansas statute in the Chapter 39 that deals with falsely representing an assistance animal, which includes blind guide dogs, other service animals, etc. And you kind of run into that, as well as adopting definitions of emotional support animal, miniature horse, and service animal from the ADA. Not actually the ADA itself, but the codified federal regulations, basically they're administrative regulations that then clarify the ADA. We've taken the definition from that, added that into the definition sections of our animal ordinances. That way we have a clear definition of what it is, and then we refer back to the CFRs as well as the KSAs to say, hey, this is what we mean by service animal. And then we get into actually the criminalizing of it, and basically if it's certain kind of animals, it's a different severity. Just that way we maintain it, because we've had people claim, the big issue last year was pit bulls, but also we had pigs. We had other animals that people claimed were their service, those little tiny pigs, I don't know what they're called, but they're claiming that, and it hurts our citizens and their ability to actually utilize these service animals for that. So based upon that, based upon the state statutes been in the book since 2003, 2004, as well as the clarifications in the ADA and their guidelines for it, this is why I'm presenting this ordinance to the commission. I'm open up any questions if necessary.
So if I say I have this cat is my service animal, and I can be challenged on it and have to prove, or?
If it's a cat, yes.
Well, I'm just,
Yeah.
or,
No, yeah, the only two kinds of animals can qualify as a service animal, and it's because of their ability to be trained for it. One is any dog, canine, and then miniature horses. Mm-hmm. So if you say it's a service cat, it's a service pig, it's a service cow, boa constrictor, whatever, none of those qualify.
The service horse. Yeah, interesting.
yeah.
Miniature horse is okay, but
Right.
Yeah, big ones aren't trainable, only miniatures.
and then you get into a danger issue with that.
Yeah. I know when I was the chief of police, we ran into this problem quite a bit, and I think it's a good idea to address it, such as you're doing, Mr. Sykes, because it is a problem.
I think you've defined it very well here as to how the officers can approach this type of situation when they come up to a citizen who wants to claim, for whatever reason, that it's a emotional support dog or whatever the case, or emotional support horse or whatever the case may be, and would have to explain what it does for them, and if it doesn't meet the criteria, then it's a violation, and I fully support this.
And for the questions that can be asked, I took that directly from the CFRs, from the federal regulations. So those are the only questions that can be asked per the ADA and the clarification of it, so that way we don't run afoul of it. Because the Title II restrictions under the ADA govern us and what we can and can't do, and federal law preempts it, so that way we're following the law, but at the same time, we're safeguarding our citizens and their ability to actually use legitimate service animals.
The only thing is the officers will have to kind of stick strictly to what you tell them what they can say. If they don't, they're going to get themselves.
And we gave guidelines out for that last year to Chief Breesy and I did, because we took it directly from the ADA. This is just taking it from being procedure to ordinance. And this way the ordinance can be their guide.
Questions for Mr. Stites?
Make a motion, we approve ordinance G 1239.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion or comment? Roll call vote?
Commissioner Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Commissioner Underhill?
Yes.
Mayor Landis?
Yes.
Commissioner Albritton?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Next item is consideration of ordinance G 1240, enhancing penalties for prohibited animal offenders. Mr. Stites.
Well, two things with this. One is looking at basically a habitual or repeat offender, looking at the prohibited animals in there, which are various fowl, poisonous lizards, wolverines, wolves, hybrids of those animals, as well as the various breeds of pit bull. And the thing that we've seen is that some of these animals, in my experience here in court, is that they will have an animal seized from them, it's taken to the shelter, and then maybe a couple months later, maybe a month later, maybe 6 months later, they come back and have the same exact issue with the same kind of animal, but not the same exact one. Mm-hmm. And then 3 to 6 months later, it happens for a third time. And what we see is the shelter's being filled up with a number of animals that didn't ask to be there. And so this isn't passing necessarily judgment on the animals themselves, but what it is passing judgment on people that can't follow law. What I liken it to is our neighbors to the west, state-wise, have legalized a certain drug. And so people think it's okay to have it over here, doesn't mean it's okay. And so if we're going to have an ordinance on the books, we have people that are basically saying we don't think that applies to us. Whatever kind of prohibited animals. We had one guy that had multiple various livestock taken from him because he worked at a farm, but he kept bringing them into town. And he did that 2-3 times at least. And so we've also seen it with the pit bulls as well, to be honest with that. And people keep getting the same breed of animal, even though they know it's prohibited, it keeps getting seized. And so we have 3 or 4 pit bulls from one person at a time that are filling up our shelter just because they don't want a different breed. And so what we see are these animals are going through that because these people can't make a good choice. So that's why I'm asking you to increase the penalty starting on May 1st. That way, any priors before then that's following standard protocol, like how we use in DUIs, theft, etc., taking the same language from there. So that way, we have an increased penalty for people that are just habitual violators.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, but it's going to be necessary to trigger this ordinance that the law enforcement officer or animal control officer that comes into contact with them the first time is going to have to take enforcement action. If they seize that animal, they're going to have to ticket them into court. Am I correct?
Yes.
To get this progression to, offense 1, offense 2, offense 3 that you're going to have to be aware of. So they'll have to actually take enforcement action each time that they run into this situation, right?
Yeah. It'll be a collaborative effort between the PD and the legal departments. That way, they make sure to ticket them, and from my understanding is they've been using the new digiticket system very well and willingly. Not saying they're over-ticketing, but it's making ticket writing a lot easier for them. And so these animal issues, they seem to be very cooperative with us as well.
Well, the judge has leeway to increase well beyond the minimum if they are a repeat offender.
He can, and one of the things that I also want to make sure with this is that way the commission, with its will, if it passes this,
shows the importance of the stair stepping there by decreasing the minimum floor that the judge could utilize there.
Make a motion, we approve ordinance G 1240.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Commissioner Underhill.
Yes.
Mayor Landis.
Yes.
Commissioner Albritton.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Next item is consideration to award the demolition of 1105 North Adams Street bid to Pearson Excavating of Junction City in the amount not to exceed $3,600. Chief Johnson?
Is that 1105? I'm sorry, 1105. Mayor, Commissioners, come before you this evening. Bids have been received for the demolition of the property at 1105 North Adams Street. It was done by sealed bid. They were opened on the 9th of April. We received 4 bids from the contractors. The winning bid for the contractors, excuse me, a little out of sorts, was Pearson Excavating for $3,600 and can be done within 15 days.
Questions?
I'll make a motion to award the demolition of 1105 North Adams Street bid to Pearson Excavating of Junction City, Kansas, in the amount not to exceed $3,600.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? In favor of the motion, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Carries 5-0. Next item, consideration to award the demolition of a 135 West 11th Street bid to Glessner Dirt Contracting of Junction City in the amount not to exceed $3,950. Chief Johnson.
Mayor, Commissioners, again, this is another property that we brought to you, and the bids were open on the 9th of April. And the bid that was presented to us was for $3,950 with a 30-day work session to demolish the structure and clean it up.
Any questions for Chief?
I'll make a motion to award the demolition of 135 West 11th Street bid to Glessner Dirt Contracting, Junction, Kansas, and the amount not to exceed $3,950.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or comment? All in favor of the motion, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next item, consideration to award the demolition of 220 East 12th Street bid to Pearson Excavating of Junction City in the amount not to exceed $3,075. Chief?
Mayor, Commissioners, again, this property was brought before you. Bids were open on the 9th of April. Pearson Excavating came in with a bid of $3,075 and approximately 15 days to finish the work.
Where are we in our demolition budget?
We're just beginning. We still have
budget.
still have considerable funding to carry on what we're doing.
And we may, I don't know whatever happened to the one on Webster, if that one ever got sold or not.
I don't know about I believe the property is in that process, but
And
the
that
house
will
has
be
been
paid in the-
demolished, the lot's clean, so.
Okay,
And there's a person who wants to buy the lot, but they want to force the person to pay for it, so,
gotcha.
which will allow us more money than the,
Any further questions for Chief?
Make a motion to award the demolition of 220 East 12th Street bid to Pearson Excavating of Junction City, Kansas, in amount not to exceed $3,075.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Albritton is the demolisher tonight. All in favor of the motion, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Let's see, next item, discuss recent changes in the Building and Codes Department. Chief Johnson.
Yes, sir. Jim, if you would, please. The Building and Codes Department, I've taken charge of it since 4th of February. We have a lot of work to do. We have a terrible amount of work to do. Tonight, I'm going to explain some things and hopefully alleviate a lot of stress. Okay, Jim, which one of these? Okay. I'm used to the hand crank on the roller slide. First thing is the adoption of codes according to the Insurance Service Organization that rates our communities. They rate our communities so that underwriters can write our insurance policies. And one of the documents I gave you was an article written by ISO. And in there, it talks about the importance of having codes, essential, strong enforcement of codes, being up to date on our codes, and having our personnel trained and available and being subject matter experts to deal with the code issues that are presented to them. The article basically is self-explanatory. If you haven't had a chance to read it, please do. Not only does the fire department affect our ISO, code enforcement affects our ISO. And that is what we pay either by business or homeowner for our homeowner's insurance at some level. The underwriters look at this, and that's how they rate our community. So through this process with ISO, we have to make sure that what we're doing is up to standard. I looked at cities of the first and second class with similar populations to Junction City. I looked at Dodge City, Garden City, Emporia, Derby, Prairie Village, and the rest of them there on your list. All have similar standards. All are also looking at going from the 12 to the 15 or 2012 to the 2018 code standard. We're all in that same process right now, cities our size. The City of Manhattan is currently on the ICC 2015, and they are working towards going to the 18. And they require, once you get your testing, according to KSA 121556 for residential and general contractors, and that Chapter 12 series also covers all of the trades. That is a state statute that's been in place from roughly 1989. They require 12 hours of continuing ed every 2 years. Salina is on the 2012 codes, but they require 18 hours over 3 years and mandate 9 hours be code training. So what we have on our books right now is in line with what everybody else is doing. 1508 from the state statute is for the companies for different standards of examinations, licensure examinations. So if we have codes, we have to have examinations. That's required by the state. They got what they call a block score. And most trades have, all the trades have to have them, the plumbers, electricians, carpenters, not carpenters, excuse me, going old school. Plumbers, electricians, and mechanical have to have it. Residential and general contractors have to have it, according to state statute. And again, these have been in place since 1989. 1508 to 1557 are the different disciplines that are out there. And all of them generally repeat themselves as they go down the list. This one here is talking about the building regulations for contractors in 1556. It talks about the testing, and it talks about the examination process that contractors are required by the state to go through. Again, it's required by the state. Now, looking at Title V, Section 500 of our code. Title V, Section 500 of our code is the building construction code for the city of Junction City. It's been in place since 2010. And in 2010, also in that document, which I can't find out how that happened or the time frame, but we adopted the 2012 International Code Council codes. The also code, it talks about minimum housing, moving of structures, dangerous and unsafe structures, fire insurance proceeds. When a structure catches on fire, has to be demolished, we hold a certain percentage until that's done. We did that with the Bluffs. That was a perfect example of that. And contractor licensing regulations that the city has accepted. Now, on 580.07, this says that our contractors, they're licensed. They're required to be licensed, and it talks about the application process. It talks about licensing and renewal on the 31st of December when their license expires. Now, I've had recently contractors come into the office wanting their license in March and April. We can't do that. Our code says you have to come in by the 31st of December. And I have given a grace period till December 31st, 2019 for those contractors who did not come in 2018 to renew. We are still issuing them permits. We are still allowing them to work. But those contractors failed to do their part. Insurance requirements. Every contractor is required to have their insurance. We talk about workman's comp insurance. We talk about comprehensive liability. And we talk about the contractor that has an inactive license. If somebody doesn't renew their license, say they go to work in another community for another year, they don't need to renew here. It's inactive. As long as they can provide their continuing ed hours and they have a block score, all they have to do is come back and we move on.
Who provides the continuing education?
Right now, City Junction City does not. But as of I am working on a plan with Manhattan Tech for us to provide 6 hours every quarter of continuing ed training for all disciplines. I meet with them on the 25th of April to see what program we can start. Be very similar to the program that's offered by Manhattan Tech, may not be as stringent because theirs is a little more advanced than ours. They've had a 15-year head start on us on doing things like this. But as of the first of the year, we'll be able to provide that. So, and we will start with the classes on the Title V codes, and we'll go into the ICC codes. We'll go into offering CPR, first aid, National Safety Council stuff, whatever needs to be done to make sure they can get their 12 hours every 2 years. We have a responsibility to offer that. We're requiring them to meet these standards. We have that responsibility. I'm working on that program along with a multitude of other things that I have to work on. The license and administration, they come, they apply, we provide the study material they can purchase from us. We can provide the IRC manual they can purchase from us, tax-free, ordered by the city with about a 20 to 30% discount. They want a test, we fill out the sponsor sheet. We help them locate the test if it's not on the sheet, and hopefully in the near future, hopefully after July, and I'll know more after I meet with Manhattan Tech, but they've had their application in, and I think they're going to become a full-time testing center. But I'll know more in April when I go see them on the 25th. I'll have more information for that. So that'll be available. The other thing that is a misconception is the license is not transferable. The license is issued to an individual, not a company or corporation. The state is very explicit on that. It is a person, not a corporation or entity. It's the contractor we're licensing. The company has so many other things that they have to face. That's not the issue. But we're licensing the contractor.
So not everybody in the construction company has to be licensed, just the one overseeing the work.
The person responsible.
Right.
If they're going to be a general contractor and represent their company, they need to be licensed. Yes, sir. Continuing education, again, 12 hours every 2 years. And we're going to provide 6 hours every quarter. And we're going to break it out. It won't be 6 hours at one time. It might be 3 hours here, 3 hours there. CPR would probably be a Saturday session because CPR and first aid takes about 6 hours. So all these things we're going to provide. Licensing and administration, again, as a code administrator, I can accept, according to our standards, I can accept anything from the International Association of Continuing Education and CEUs from any community college related to the field. If a contractor or a trades goes to the community college and takes a class, brings that CEU certificate in, he's got his hours. If he takes a 12-hour class, he's going to get 1.2 CEUs. I know that's 12 hours. Because as an EMT, I have to have 2.4 every year. That's 24 hours every year I have to have as an EMT.
I have to have 150 every 3 years.
Exactly. You know, our paramedics are a little behind you there, but I think it's 150 in 2 years. But these are the things that we need to be doing because that's in our code. It's been there since 2010. Reexamination, again, if they don't pass, they can take the test as many times as they need to. There's also websites that they can go to and take practice tests. So all of that's available to them. And I'm hoping that we can work something out to where we can actually maybe have some coaching classes before they go test. But I have to find out what Manhattan Tech's going to be willing to do. You have limited contractors in the city. According to code and according to the residential code, a limited contractor can do exterior work. Exterior work includes roof, windows, and decks. The code is very explicit. I know we have folks with limited contractors license that want to do more. Unfortunately, the adopted international code says they cannot, because we get into moving walls and the amount of sheetrock, stud walls. There's a lot of computations that go into that process, and we still haven't figured that out yet. I'm working on it to see if there's a solution, but right now, as the code reads, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. It's very entailed of what they can do. But a residential general contractor can do all of that in Group R Division 1 and Group R Division 3 homes. You can work on any residential structure in the city up to a duplex with a general residential contractor's license. When you get into the multi-residential and the commercial, you need to have the general contractor's license. That allows you to be the general contractor for the site and do what needs to be done. Those are set by the state and set by the 2012 IRC code. If we make exemptions, when we are rated by ISO, we take the risk, because the more exemptions you have in your code, the lower your score is going to be. Because they're looking for code enforcement, not code exemption. That's how they work. The underwriters are very, very stringent on those things. They pay for ISO to do the research. They pay for ISO to do the inspections on 87% of the communities in this country. They pay for them to come and do our fire inspections. They pay for them to come do our codes enforcement inspections. All of that is what they do.
But if I have my limited contractor license, I can buy the house next to mine, pull a permit for siding and windows. I can hire an electrician to come in and do some updates. I can hire a plumber to come in, a licensed plumber to come in, do some updates, and then put that house on the market.
And
correct?
each of the disciplines would have to get their discipline-specific permit from the office.
Okay.
The problem comes into when we start moving walls or we start doing structural, because then we need something. We need to know what it looked like before you did it so we can inspect it, and maybe, and hopefully, you didn't change a load-bearing wall by mistake. It can happen. You have a bad day, you knock a wall out you didn't think about. And so we need to make sure that it's done right. But a limited contractor is just that. If they bring in the other trades, the other trades have to get their permits for the work they're going to do.
So it doesn't matter what kind of a contractor the person is, they're still required to get that 12 hours every 2 years?
All trades and all licenses. That way they're up to date on the codes. There's no way they don't understand what's going on or anything like that. So having that 12 hours of continuing ed requirement, and we're providing what we can to get them through to get their 12 hours, plus they can go somewhere else and get them and bring them back. We validate it. We're not making it overly difficult. If you look here, licensed by discipline, in the 2018, looks like all the residential contractors, they did renew. We had 18 limited contractors not renew in 18, and we're at two or three contractors right now for the general that did not renew in 18. In 2019, we have a considerable amount of general contractors renewing. The big question is, what do we do? I'm still looking into that. I haven't had a chance to even speak to our legal about what we're going to be legally allowed to do. We only have 35% of 110 contractors currently licensed with a bulk score.
With what?
What's called a bulk score, your contractor score. When you take the test, you have to score 75 or better. Well, we only have 35% out of 110. It's roughly 34 general contractors that are currently licensed with a bulk score. I haven't looked at the trades yet. I haven't had time. Because we're using the old Encode 9 system, I have to go individually by every contractor the city has ever had by their license number and see if they have a bulk score. The system does not pull a report for me. So, a lot of late nights. In 2020, we have a decent-sized group of persons that need to renew. The process is what we have to figure out, but I have other issues that I have to work out first. Again, we have contractors coming in that are
that did not renew when everyone else did and want their license. We can't do that. If it's been done in the past, it should not have been done. But our code is explicit, 31st of December. When it expires, you need to come and get your new license. It's right there.
And that's all by state statute.
It's by state statute
If we
and
don't follow that, then we are liable as a community.
if we do not follow the state statute, the city accepts total liability, if I'm not correct, sir.
It could open us up to it. One of the things is we can't accept out of it because since it's under the 12, 1500s, not 13, 14, or 15 of the KSAs, it applies to all cities. So I don't see us being able to home rule out of it because even if we don't enforce it, it's still a state statute, but it might fall on us in terms of liability for what work is done if we choose to turn an eye to it or whatnot.
So the block score and testing, if anyone, and they have to have that every 2 years, no matter what?
Not the testing. The 12, once they test, they're only required to get the continuing education.
So a block test one time throughout
And continuing
their career.
education for the rest of the time. And this evening, I had a contractor hand me his bulk score from 1988, and I'm quite sure he's got his Con Ed hours.
And this is the same standard Manhattan uses?
That is the same standard Manhattan and the cities that you saw on the screen use. It's almost worded exactly the same.
You were saying something about Manhattan will not reciprocate with us because we do not?
Right now, if you do not have a current license with Manhattan and you do not have a bulk score, Manhattan will not give you a license. If you have a bulk score, you can come over here, I make a phone call, they validate it, I can give you a license. If you have the bulk score, you can go to Manhattan and work because you'll have the bulk score and we can validate it. We have contractors that come from Topeka and Salina with their bulk scores. We call back to that code office, hey, is this guy up to date? Is he good? Yes, he is. He's current. We license him. We don't have an official interlocal agreement to do that, but if they're licensed under the state standard, we have to accept it. With the licensure of plumbing contractors, again, these are just the fees that they pay for different licensings for masters. For journeymen, we have different licensing processes. This is where I have issues right now is the Board of Contractors, the only documentation that we have that they have ever met was in 2010. The Board of Contractors, it says 3 years is the term. This board is supposed to appoint people. It's not been done. 3 of the contractors who were on the board are no longer with us. They passed away. My contractors board is basically defunct. So we have to figure out what we're going to do. The contractor board should be handling the current issue that was brought to you this evening. But no, it wasn't brought to me, it was brought to you. That's what the contractor's board's for. That's why it was developed. But the contractor board is defunct. We have a person that was appointed to the board but was not appointed by this board. He was just appointed to the board. And there's no documentation of how he got on the board.
Since there's been some issues on city side and the community as well, the building community, I wonder if there's a way to structure classes going on from now through the end of the year to get guys up to speed so they can take their exam and get that done.
I will talk to Manhattan Tech and see what we can do, sir.
We want people to be able to work. We want people to do it the right way and be licensed and do it the right. And so we're not in trouble, and they're not in trouble, and everybody does the work the right way.
Again, I haven't had a chance to speak with Mr. Britton about what we can do because right now I'm at it. What the state statute says and what other communities have done, we need to weigh that and see if we're willing to do that. I don't know. I haven't even got that far yet. I'm still trying to figure out what happened to our board.
Is there a cost involved for the classes?
I don't know. I'd have to talk to Manhattan Tech and find out what it is. And
Maybe something we can take a look at.
And I've actually reached out to the ICC, and Mr. Tim Ryan is working with me on possibly getting some folks to come and do some free classes.
I'm sure there's some leaders in the building community that would be glad to assist with developing a plan that works to make everything legal and proper.
What about forming this board? Getting this board going?
Well, I mean, that's what I mean. It's-
The chief,
Yeah.
the head of the department
He
needs
needs
to
to
bring
oversee that.
recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And
like
again,
every other-
I'm still trying to figure out what happened, so we don't make the same mistakes.
Just any comments on
We just need to do it right going forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Again, the last recorded meeting of the board, a notice that went out was in 2010. 3 have passed on. 1 member was appointed by somebody, not by this board, so it goes against our statute, our standards. And, the board or commission, do any of you remember ever reappointing somebody to the board?
Never.
It never came.
It's never been since I've been on.
And the research that I've done shows that it's never been brought. So what's going on with the codes department? We're reorganizing to become more effective. I've redirected responsibilities in relation to job descriptions. We have 2 building inspectors, we have 2 code enforcement officers, and we have a permit technician. That's the office. And we've spoken about a few issues, and hopefully we can work those through. The evaluation process of that part of the department is still ongoing because we still have a lot to work out. I have 1,200 permits that were never closed from 2 years, 17 and 18. I have no record. I have a major national chain wanting inspection records, and I'm scrambling to find them. The evaluation of the codes, we're going to bring them online with industry standards because this community deserves better. We have a responsibility as a department and as a city to ensure that what we're doing is within the standards. And if we're going to accept the international code, we need to follow the international code. We're bound by state statute. These are the things that we have to work on with this department. And right now I'm working to try to figure out how we can move forward. Once I figure out how, then I'll reach out. But right now, I have to figure it out. And that's where I'm at. I've been with about 2 months now. It's been a whirlwind. It's been a whirlwind. So what we're trying to do is make sure what we're doing, that we do the right thing and we do it right. That's what we're trying to make sure. With everything that's happened in the past is in the past. We can't do anything about it. What we have to do is look forward to the future and say, what are we going to do to make things better? How do we make things better? I've looked at some of our permitting processes and some of our inspection processes and asking, why are we even doing this? If you have your AC unit on the outside of your house replaced, do you need an inspection? Not really. I would bet the mechanical guy that's out there doing that knows what he's doing, or he wouldn't have that job. If you're doing a sewer repair, if that plumber doesn't get it right, who's the first person that the customer's going to call? It's not going to be us. When he goes to flush and it doesn't go down, he's calling that plumber. They're going to do it right. The question is, what do we need to inspect and what do we not need to inspect? What is that? And until we sit down and figure out what we're doing in our office, we can't reach out and ask that question. There are some things that we're going to want to do that are different, but that's more protecting the city than it's doing anything else. The licensing, we're still working on that. I'm still in the first couple of days of weeks or months or whatever you want to call it, but I'm still trying to figure out how we're going to do this. I'm reaching out to the other cities and saying, hey, when you went to this standard, what did you do? And maybe we can use something in there. Maybe we'll have something we can use. We don't know. I've spent the last week calling every one of those cities and saying, send me what you got. Manhattan's reached out and they're helping us. They did it 15 years ago and they said it was a madhouse. But they got through it. Do we provide a waiver? Do we not provide a waiver? What do we do? The continuing ed, right now, I'm not overly concerned about that until we get in the first year where we can schedule this properly. If we start pumping that out, I'm not sure. The training class for testing, for those that want to test, if I can get that information, I'm going to ask about it on the 25th, we'll have it.
The whole point is, at this time, I have a department, we have failed you. And that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. We have a responsibility to the 35,000 people in this county to do it right. And if we're not doing it right, we're not helping anybody. Now, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
So when can we get an update?
I'm hoping to, probably in a month I can have something.
Okay.
Again, I have to talk with Manhattan Tech. I have to catch him when he's not running around. But we're working on the answers, but right now I just don't have them.
What about reforming the building commission?
And that's one of the things hopefully I'll have for you next month, is that we can reform that and move forward. Because to move forward with the 18 codes, I need them. I need them. I can't do it without them.
Right. No, I think it's important that they're involved in the solution.
Correct. Right now, I'm comparing what we have and seeing if there's anything that we have things in there that are already in the 18 code, so we don't need to exempt them. So if we don't need to exempt them, they're gone. We don't need to exempt them.
Relook at permits and fees and different things like that, too.
Exactly, sir. We need to look at what we're doing.
A comprehensive review.
Yes, sir. It's going to take a while.
Questions?
So is that something, if somebody was interested in being in that board, that they could contact you?
If they would contact me and just, let me know they're interested, and we'll meet, we'll talk and discuss what's going to happen, or if I know at the time that they put in, but I'd be more than happy to sit down. What I'd be looking for, I'm actually looking at reorganizing, instead of having a plumber's board, an electrician's board, a mechanic's board, and a contractor's board, have one board. Have 2 masters in each of the disciplines. Have a general contractor, a residential contractor, and an engineer. And I think that would give us a good balanced board. If the board agrees, I can bring that to you the next board, and we can change our board, at least in that part of it, and we can move forward.
I'll do the ordinance change, but it's not a big
Or
deal.
that section.
I would think that getting a board together, there's a lot of people in this room, a hell of a lot more qualified to help us correct this stuff than you or I.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
If we can get some of those guys, these folks involved, and, help us along the way, it'll benefit everybody.
Yep.
Yes, I agree totally. By the next board meeting, I'll have at that part of the ordinance, I'll have it reestablished to where we can have one board that can do the work. I think that would be better than trying to run between 3 or 4 or 5 boards.
Great. Anyone else? No. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner comments. Commissioner Brown.
Flint Hills Regional Conference is next Wednesday, the 24th. I think you guys send emails out requesting anyone that wants to attend that. I think I've passed out agendas for that already, so look forward to that. Alan, do you know what the status on the other baseball fields are? We're getting down to the wire here on South Park and Sertoma. I noticed that Sertoma hadn't had any work.
You'll have to ask.
Do you know where we're at on that, Ed?
Yeah, the contractor actually started today. Today
Okay.
was the scheduled start time, all the materials.
Going to do both the fields at South Park
Probably
and
got
Sertoma, right?
the South Park done by now today.
Great, great,
If we don't get too much rain tomorrow, we'll have them done this week.
good. I saw a big load of, I was telling the other commissioner, I saw a big load of sod headed for Raythert Field yesterday. So we're hopefully getting close to having that getting
I'm
sodded.
guessing a fourth is laid.
Pardon me, sir?
Raythert, a fourth of the sod's laid already, a third?
I didn't get out late today, but
Okay.
probably over a fourth was done late last night. Working into the night. Plans of this morning, they still have sod in the parking lot, and another truck was expected to come in today.
And it can't be on the sod for 3 to 4 weeks till it gets set?
Probably 3 weeks.
And Ed, since we're pestering you about parks, the turf looks spectacular. Do we have any plans regarding painting of the fence or any other, kind of facial things at Rather?
All that this year, budget time, budget time to go to the next step. It's a pretty big project we pulled off, and unless you're talking something for this year, we didn't have anything.
I thought we were going to replace all the decking out at the beer garden and then replacing the fencing along the outfield as well. Thought we talked about that in last year's budget session for this year.
No, I don't think that,
Yeah, we talked about it.
I know at least the decking portion of it, the
Decking,
fence we
you
were
can fall
gonna
through right now.
right.
have fallen through.
That needs
We
to
did talk
happen
about it.
ASAP.
Yeah, that didn't, I mean, that
Somebody's
didn't
write a
get.
check.
Yeah, we did talk about that at the last budget session.
Well,
Yeah, we talked about, but don't,
okay.
Right.
But we need it.
Yeah, and I agree, the deck's in bad shape. We power washed it this last week, and there's lots of boards we're gonna have to replace just to, get it to go, so. And I know Cecil's on board with wanting to, you bet.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's
Commissioner
okay.
Rowland,
That's
finish
okay.
up.
You're perfectly fine. These are good things to know, I think, for not only us, for everybody. But I did compliment Ed a couple of weeks ago. I got a compliment from one of the business persons downtown about our cleanup person that we put in the budget for this year that replaced
Good job.
Kenny Langdon. And you've been able to, and they're supposed to be what, like how many hours a week are they doing?
They're a half-time person.
Half-time person,
They're
so-
half-time, and then the other half-time, they're reading water meters, helping out
I
with
had a
Lindsay's
compliment,
crew.
that they did a really good job on 9th and Washington the other day on some stuff and everything,
He's
so.
been down there every day we can
Great
get him
thing.
down there.
Cool. What we've been able to do on that.
And just-
The playground park, again, it's nonstop over there. I think we really need to look in the budget and somehow maybe do a little bit of looking, maybe improving maybe picking another park and maybe looking at improving some of the I know we'll never be able to do that again, but at least maybe improving some of the playground equipment in another park next year, maybe at another location, but wow, it's amazing how many kids are over there. It's hard to even get on there on weekends. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Albritton?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. First of all, that was a good financial brief there. I did enjoy that. I think that just goes to be a good indication of our good leadership that's been here through the years. I know with Mayor, I'm pretty sure Commissioner Fitzgerald had a little bit to do with it, and especially our city manager, Mr. Dinkle, just to see that progress and see the decrease of our debt and everything like that. I think that's just goes to, and I want to thank them for their service in getting our city back on the right track here. At an animal shelter meeting last week, two things. Good thing we're getting that ordinance kind of cleared up. The people down, our director, Vanessa Gray, down at the animal shelter, she does a good job of handling all the business that goes on down there, and definitely clarification on these ordinance definitely helps her job and will help us in the long run. There is want to announce April 27th at Landmark National Bank at 9. The 9 and 12 is going to be an adoption event. They're going to have, I know Vanessa and her team is going to be down there to try to, I think it's going to be a little, some refreshments and snacks for everybody to have a good time and consider or to adopt a animal. And then also this weekend, Mayor gave a really good welcome at our first annual United Way Easter event, which was a good success. A lot of churches, I believe it was 6 different churches or groups got to participate, so I feel like that was a really good event to just see our city and also to benefit a good cause, as in United Way. So I think they raised quite a bit of funds for them. United Way does a lot in this city, and it was a tremendous event. Like to see our city come together. Like I said last meeting, when ordinary people come together, we just see extraordinary things happen. And time and time again, that's what so much I love about this city, because when we come together and unify, we can do some great things. That's all I have.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. This evening, I sit on the Military Affairs Council as a chair. few things in regards to the military. The month of April is the month of the military child, so I know several of us sitting up here, and I know probably lots of y'all in the community are affiliated with the military, whether you're retirees or had been in and had children in the military. So the children, the dependents of soldiers are ones to be admired and respected for their resiliency every time, the parents have to move and everything like that. Because I know my husband and I raised 2 children in the Army, so we appreciate them and their families. Also, coming up this month, Fort Riley's having their annual post-wide college graduation. So there'll probably be several hundred, whether they're soldiers, dependents, retirees, that'll be graduating. And that ceremony is going to be being held here in Junction City at the Convention and Visitors Bureau Center at the Marriott on Hammonds. I'll be emceeing that. There'll probably be, like I said, several hundred that's going to be graduating. So what that brings to our community is not only those folks that live here, but potentially relatives and friends that will come to town. So we can expect April 23rd, maybe have a bit more people here in the community. Also, next Thursday on April the 25th is our monthly Military Affairs Council breakfast. The guest speaker this month is retired Lieutenant Colonel or retired Colonel Gary LaGrange, who is the CEO of the Save Farm, which is the Service Members Agricultural Vocational Education Program. It's geared to helping former soldiers or military people with PTSD. And so that will be the guest speaker. And again, that'll be at the Convention and Visitors Bureau Center at the Marriott on Hammonds. And starts at 7:30. So if you're still interested in that, just get with the chamber. Also coming up for all of us retirees, Friday, April the 26th from 09 to 1200 at Irwin Army Community Hospital. They'll be having the retiree health fair. So it's a good time to probably get caught up on your shots and all that good stuff like that. We also have coming up the Fort Riley monthly retirement ceremony. This month it's going to be actually at the Building 580, the division headquarters at 10. I've went to the last several of those, and the number of soldiers retiring that come to the ceremony, I thought it was a pretty good number, but really it's not. So the last of what I reported last month, I had said that 16 of them, retired at the ceremony. 10 of them stayed in Kansas. Really, it was more like 66 or more soldiers that had retired, and that's the ones that chose to go to the retirement ceremony. So a lot of them that retired don't. So every month, there's quite a few that are retiring, and quite a few of them are choosing Kansas and Junction City and other areas as their home after the military. On April 27th, the annual Combat Officers Dinner is going to be here at the Convention Visitors Bureau at the Marriott. We're expecting as many as 500 people could be in attendance, and that's former combat officers or current officers of the 1st Infantry Division, their spouses, their guests. So again, our community will be busy with a lot of former soldiers coming to town, and as many as 5 or 6 former division commanders will be in attendance as well. That's pretty much everything in regards to the military, but I would like to do a shout out to, most of y'all know that every weekend just about I do cleanup projects, and I have many, many volunteers that come and help, and just want to make sure to tell them thank you. We worked on 2 pretty extensive projects this weekend, community projects, working on downtown and helping out at the Heritage Park. So, a lot of work done, and it looks really, really good. April the 27th is our spring cleanup here in Junction City. I'm not sure if it starts at 8 o'clock, probably meet at Spin City. And the last thing I'd like to just mention is the Vietnam Memorial. We'll be working on that soon to get that the landscape kind of picked up and cleaned up on that. So, Mayor, that's everything I got. Thank you. I know I talked a lot. I'm sorry.
I don't think you have any time for me anymore.
I think we're all done.
Yeah.
I went fast.
No MPO meeting this month. I do have a ATA bus meeting tomorrow. Chamber meets on the 25th. And then I want to remind everybody that the statewide Young Professional Summit is being hosted here in Junction City this year. Registration can be done through the chamber office or at ypkansas.com. And so we're hoping for a good turnout and a good showing here in our community for that. And that's it.
Thank you. Like Commissioner Albritton said, I did a welcome address for the United Way fundraiser this past Saturday. It was really well done. My wife and I went to the South Pacific show at the Junction City Little Theater. It was very well done this past weekend. It's just a great facility. Also used Rolling Meadows this past weekend, and first time with the new knee, so everything went well. The clubhouse is looking really good. The updates out there are very impressive. Restroom facilities, best they've looked in ever. So I'd like to thank all the contractors coming out tonight. Your input is very much needed. We need to go forward and do things the right way. So what else do I have? Library board met this past week. Not much to say there. EDC will meet this coming Thursday. So, do you have something?
I'd like to make a little speech first before you adjourn.
Okay, so during public comment when you signed up, but we'll get to you. I'll get to you in a minute. Alan?
Okay, Mayor and Commissioners, we had the finance report tonight from from Jeff, Mr. White, I couldn't think of his last name. I think what that shows our growth in our cash we have on hand, and I'm a real believer that you have to have reserves in city government, utilities. Been through disasters before, so I know what it takes. And I'd like to be in a position we can operate the city for 6 to 10 months without any income, and that gives us security and also increases bond ratings and everything else. But what the report doesn't show is the fact that in the last 4 or 5 years, the amount of money that we've been able to put into the city and streets. I know there's arguments that we don't put enough in there yet, but we have potholes and they're going to get fixed. But 15 years ago, I think the city was putting in 200, 300,000 a year in streets. Now we're closer to 1.2, 1.4, 1.5 million by the time we get done, plus all the grants we've gotten. So, and Ray's been instrumental in getting the grants for us. Playground, gorgeous spot. I just would encourage them, I met with the playground committee on their issue this morning, but is that ask the community to respect the playground. I mean, there's a lot of work, a lot of efforts, a lot of money. There's $400,000 worth of equipment out there. And all the work that was done by city staff and doing the surveys and everything else is respected. I mean, we're going to get signs up there on keeping dogs off of there, but chewing gum in the turf, people misusing the equipment, crawling on top of it. It's just those issues. And we've talked about some police presence there, but again, respect what we got and very thankful for what we got there. One thing that came across 2 weeks ago, last week I think it was signed by the governor, as you commissioners all realize, a couple of years ago they moved elections from the spring to the fall. And they moved that you had to take oath of office on the second Monday. So we had a special meeting. They changed the law that you're still going to get elected in the fall, but we can take oath of office. We can change it from any time after December 1 till the second Monday in January. I know some should be changing. I would just be my druthers, and I'm going to bring it to you so you know about it, is not to change what we did, because we have to rewrite ordinances and everything else. What it means is that you have a commission meeting on the first Tuesday in January, and then we come back the following Monday like we did last year, and we basically have a special meeting to swear in the people. You could change, but I don't know if there's a real. We got to figure it out somewhat. So I'm not sure unless you really wanted to change, we can. But I really think the way it worked out last time worked out well, and I was as skeptical as anybody, and worked out well. So unless there's a driving change, I'd recommend we keep it the same, and then in the future, if we want to change it, we can. Because to get it done now, Tammy has to go to publication pretty soon to announce the election that happens, and we have to say when the terms would start. And so just with the late change in the state statute, unless you have a driving, we'll move forward then. And I believe that's all I got. Sorry, I was coughing tonight, but.
Okay. Mr. Stites?
That's why you didn't
No
talk.
updates outside what we discussed.
That's all
I have.
Chief Precy? Or Captain Fitzgerald, there you are. Hide behind somebody. Chief Johnson?
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Ibarra? Mr. Peterson?
Nothing, thank you.
Lazier?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Osborne?
Sir.
Mr. Gurman?
Nothing, sir.
Ms. Miller?
Nothing, sir.
Ms. Milton?
Do have one thing. The U.S. Census Bureau is gearing up for the 2020 census. I was approached by the partnership specialist with the Census Bureau to create a complete count committee. So if anybody is interested in joining us, please let me know. Just reach out to me this week so I can get you on the list, and I'll have more information about it going forward. And that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Haynes?
Mr. Mayor, when you allow one to speak, you will allow anyone else in the room to speak. Can't show that bias.
Okay, Mr. Olds.
You have to open it up. It's the right thing.
I didn't say I wouldn't, did I?
Didn't say you would either.
2 minutes, please.
This is in regards to the code enforcement. Some of us took a test with Clarence Freeman in the 70s. Manhattan honors anybody who took the test and grandfathers it. Anybody that has the license expires, then they have to take the block test. And I've talked to Manhattan regarding grandfather clause. So if you push the block test originally was to be for all professionals, to be graded and sent to Florida, and it was supposed to be USA wide. Well, it turned out to be it's strictly locals. But I caution anybody that takes and lets the code NEC, which is our electrical, or USB, US building code, when they say, okay, we're going to accept the 2015, as the chief said, or 2018, is be very cautious. There is cities in the U.S. that allows the code to be accepted with exceptions. And the reason for the exceptions is some of the cities do not agree with everything that's in our code book. And you have to be super careful on what, if you say, okay, I'm going to accept the whole thing, then you have just increased the cost of a building of a house anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 in just electrical because of the codes. Now, taking the 6 units a year for each year to renew your license, I don't have a problem with that. We do that every year. And Junction City and Manhattan, several of them said that you could either renew a year or 2 years. It's 2 years for 12 or 1 year for 6. And continuing education is important because even though I've been an electrician for a lot, probably longer than some of you has even been born, I started doing electrical work when I was 10 years old with Dad and Chanute. So that puts it at 60 years for me. So, but I wanted to bring the attention to the fire chief that some of us took the block, it wasn't called a block test, it was a 4-hour test in the basement of the city, right here in Junction City, with Clarence Freeman as the grader. And we had to pass in order to either be a journeyman or a master. We had to pass on a certain percentage. And that's how we got our grade, either a journeyman or a master. And you need to really think about the grandfather clause. And I know that there's other professions that has the same thing.
Sir, we're going to have to move on here. But,
I know.
I appreciate your comments. I'd like you to talk to Chief Johnson if you've got further things to talk to him about.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought this was about an announcement about an upcoming event, so that was my error. Is there anything else? Mr. Olds.
Thank you, Mayor Landis. I'd like a clarification if it's all possible. When Chief Johnson started his presentation, he made reference to the ISO rating. If I understood him correctly, Chief Johnson, you're looking at improving the ISO rating for the city of Junction City. Is that correct?
At least maintaining, if not improving.
Right. What is our current ISO rating?
3.
What is Manhattan's?
Don't know.
Manhattan is a 3.
That's correct. What will it cost to go to a 2?
Depends on what the raters tell us.
What I meant to say was, what will it cost in terms of the citizens purchasing fire equipment to go to a 2? It's not small. It's not small amount at all. And to go to a 1, it's not small at all. So you may save $10 on your homeowner's insurance, but what you're going to pay for in fire protection is going to blow your mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We're going to move